these Asians were brought by British here to Uganda. Therefore, the British and those, they are responsible to look after those Asians. Because I have got also difficulty in Uganda of economy. And as I have said when I took over, I will make sure that before I hand over the government to another government, I must reorganize this country properly, and this is a part of my program to follow. I am the best friend of British, and your best friend is the friend who tells you your mistake. And that is why I said that the responsibility of Asians in Uganda, it is a responsibility of Great Britain. Thank you very much.
Uganda's President, General Idi Amin, makes it clear that he expects Britain to look after the Asians of Uganda, whom he no longer wants. Ever since the President's decision to expel all Asians who are not Ugandan citizens, the British High Commission in Kampala has been besieged by thousands of Asians trying to clarify their national status and seeking assurance that they'll be allowed to enter Britain. About 80,000 Asians will have to leave, and the great majority of them, at least 50,000, are holders of British passports. These are the people who were given a choice of citizenship when Uganda became independent in 1962 and who chose to remain British. In normal circumstances, if they wanted to settle in Britain, they'd have to obtain an entry voucher. A British passport alone is not enough. But in the present emergency, they're now demanding that Britain immediately honours the promises it gave them 10 years ago.
Are you one of the people who will have to go because of what President Amin has said?
Yeah, I'm one of them. I'm holding British protected passport.
What do you think will happen if you stay after the 3 months?
That is what I heard the government said. They are going to take the action. Either they will take me to court and ask me more questions that why you've been here
What do you
after
think would
3
happen?
months. That I cannot tell. It depends on the government law, what they're taking an action against me.
Do you think the British government is going to help people like you?
Yeah, yes, well, because I'm holding British passport. The British government is going to help me.
You think they'll have to take you?
Yeah, anyhow.
Why have you come here today?
Yeah, I came here to see what is happening because I'm holding British passport and I may get in trouble.
Will you have to leave because of what the President has said?
If he say I have to leave, what I can do?
Do you think Britain will help you?
Yes, because I am a technician and also I am interested. I am working with British men. My boss is British. I think they will help me.
I was Africanized. My job was Africanized. I have given notice on the 15th November. Africanized and press this copy, producing a copy of a certificate to the British High Commission that my job is Africanized. Dear sir, will you please give me now voucher? And I got reply, wait, your constant review, go and go.
So
there is no satisfactory answer from this British government.
What are they going to do for you?
I don't know. I just spoke to him, my dear sir. Now it is, I will be without job, you know. You say, no, constant review. You know, but what the people will do when they are out of job, what they will eat? They will eat stones.
Do you all think that the British government is going to allow so many Asians into the country?
They are going to reshuffle them. They will reshuffle the people.
How do you mean?
Some will be sent to Australia, that's what they say, and Canada and other places. But they should have mercy on those people who have got some members in UK. And they should join them. There's no use of sending someone to Australia when his family is in UK.
General Amin came to power in Uganda 18 months ago when he ousted the former president, Milton Obote, in a military coup. Since then, he's proved himself a tough and somewhat impulsive leader. The way he chose to inform foreign diplomats of the expulsion order was typical. The British High Commissioner and the envoys of India and Pakistan, together with Princess Elizabeth of Toro, Uganda's roving ambassador, were all summoned by the general to an extraordinary open-air lunch before the press and television cameramen.
I compliment you on the same.
The president had made up his mind and nobody was allowed to argue. The man who'd personally lowered the British flag during Uganda's independence ceremonies 10 years ago told his erstwhile colonial masters they would have to take back 50,000 of their Asian subjects within 3 months. But the general denied that his decision was either racialist or anti-British.
I took this decision for the economy of Uganda. And I must make sure that every Ugandans get a fruit of independence. Since actually Uganda is not yet independent, I will say that, even when the British handed over on the 9th of October 1962, the Uganda still not yet independent. Uganda will be independent after this, my decision, after I want to see that the whole Kampala street is not full of Indians. It must be proper black, and administration in those shops is run by the Ugandans.
Would you like to get all Asians out, really, sir?
Yes, they must go to their country.
Even nationals of Uganda?
If they want to go, they are welcome to go.
What prompted the sub-people if they don't go by the time limit?
I think they will be sitting like they are sitting on the fire. I will tell you this. You just wait after 3 months.
What will you do to them?
Okay, you will see.
You said you wanted Uganda.
I think they will not sit comfortable here in Uganda. I will tell you this. I must actually tell you the truth.
The Asians have been in East Africa for well over 100 years. In the early 19th century, the British encouraged Indian merchants to set up business on the East Coast, seeing it as a way of extending British influence in the territory. By 1850, there were 5,000 Indians in Zanzibar. They controlled almost all the foreign trade and were thought to be the financial power behind the Arab slave trade. The Indians first moved into the interior of Africa at the turn of the century, when the British built a railway from Mombasa on the coast to Uganda. The descendants of the railway workers and the traders who followed laid the foundation of the Asians' wealth. The grand houses on the outskirts of Kampala are owned by Asians, not Africans. Gradually, the Asians began to enter the professions and to fill the middle ranks of the civil service. Today, they're the main investors in industry, and their religion and culture are an established part of the East African scene. At the time of independence, the Asians had great economic power, controlling commerce and forming the only real middle class. But they had no political power, and the Africans disliked them because they appeared clannish and because they occupied positions the Africans wanted for themselves. By the 1960s, the Asians had become an isolated foreign minority in the midst of a hostile black community. President Amin's recent public statements have thrown the Asian community into near panic, and we found many of them afraid to comment openly on the president's decision to expel them.
We don't know.
You must surely have some opinion.
No, we don't know any opinion.
Good evening. What do you think about President Amin's decision to tell British Asians to leave?
What?
President Amin's decision to deport British Asians.
Not interested.
Why aren't you interested?
I don't like that. I don't like politics.
If we see anything, we are in.
Do you think there could be some problems for you if you talk?
Can't say anything. Will be trouble in, you know.
You really feel there'll be trouble if you talk?
No, no trouble.
Excuse me. What do you think of President Amin's decision to deport British Asians?
Well, it's come as a surprise, though. But apart from that, nothing else. I have no other comments to make.
Why not?
Well, because I can't say anything. I have no power to say anything. I'm just an ordinary man.
Are you a British Asian yourself?
Yeah, I am.
How do you feel about it yourself? You worried?
Well, not really. Whichever side, I am happy to live both places. Nothing more apart from that.
Do you think he can do what he says he'll do, send everybody away?
It's difficult to say. I mean, I can't give an opinion there. It's very difficult.
We find many people in the community here frightened to talk to us. Why is that, do you think?
Well, that's why you can't blame them. I too am not so keen either.
Although President Amin appears to have acted suddenly, the writing's been on the wall for Uganda's Asians for several years. During the past decade, the East African government's policy of Africanization has meant forcing those Asians who are non-citizens to give up their jobs to Africans. This was done through an elaborate system of trading licenses and work permits, and 4 years ago it produced a panic exodus from Kenya. Some 60,000 Asians fled to Britain in a 6-month period, including 12,000 in 1 week. These Asians were the last to get in before Britain decided to control the flood. Back in 1962, Britain undertook to grant citizenship and free entry to any resident of Kenya, Tanzania or Uganda who did not want to become a national of these newly independent countries. This mainly applied to the whites and the Asians. But as a result of the 1968 rush of Kenyan Asians, new immigration laws were passed which revoked the right of East African Asians to enter Britain freely. Instead, a voucher system was introduced which strictly limited the numbers of East African families who could enter Britain in a single year to no more than 3,500.
I'll finish 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. She hasn't done anything.
The East African governments went along with this legislation, forcing out no more Asians than Britain would take in. This arrangement suited both sides, since it gave the British time to absorb them and the Africans a chance to cushion the effects that the Asians' departure would have on their economies. The only people it didn't suit were the Asians, who now had to join a slow-moving queue to get into Britain. In March 1970, these Asians in Uganda staged a demonstration outside the British High Commission in Kampala to protest against the slowness of the voucher system. To them, it was little short of apartheid. The clearest warning that things would get worse came last October when President Amin ordered a detailed census of all Asians in the country. Even fingerprints were required, as well as other details concerning their citizenship and origins. Failure to register in any one of the 150 enumeration centers would have meant automatic expulsion from the country. The government said the purpose of the census was to provide statistical information on which to base its future policy of granting citizenship to the Asians. Events have now shown what the real purpose was. If the Asians needed any further warning, they had only to look to the experience of Uganda's Israeli community, all 700 of whom were expelled last March and given only a week to get out. The reason was President Amin's new friendship with Libya's General Gaddafi, who promised economic aid in return for Uganda's support for the Arabs, aid which may have given President Amin confidence that he could survive economically without the Asians. The people who are supposed to gain most from the expulsion of the Asians are the small-time African traders who now have the chance to move out of the back streets and into the city centre. President Amin's declared that African control of the nation's business is essential for real independence, and his actions are especially popular with the young, educated Ugandans who are now graduating from colleges and finding no worthwhile jobs for them to do. But there are problems. Few Africans have the capital to set up a business of any great size, and the Asians say they also lack the drive, initiative and business acumen needed to make a success. President Amin has warned that there will be shortages and economic difficulties. But even so, most African businessmen are pleased the Asians are going.
Well, to my view, to my point of view, it's very good because we have, to give a chance to Africans, Uganda Africans to develop in business so that they can actually be economically independent. As in fact, yes, we were in fact doing things which were subtracting the economy of these people. They are not allowing them chance to develop.
If the Asians do go in 90 days, as the president has ordered, do you think Africans will really be able to take over all their businesses?
At the beginning, it won't be very simple, but gradually it will develop and become very easy to run shops, say, and other businesses. Because, say, if there would be no competition, the Africans will be doing it well.
What's the problem for Africans taking over the Asian businesses?
First of all, it will be the financial problem, because now those Africans who are experienced in business don't have enough money to run big shops. And then, in fact, they can't be, it will be difficult, maybe difficult to get loans, big loans from, say, banks or anything.
Do you think it will be difficult to get imports into the country if the Asians go?
Well, I don't think that will be difficult because we have a corporation, say the Import and Export Corporation, and the government, in fact, is prepared to have the Africans import.
How do you feel about the Asians?
Well, I don't answer your question very well. What is your question again?
Do you like them, or are you glad to see them go?
In fact, I'm happy seeing them go.
There's little doubt that the feelings of the African traders are shared by other Africans throughout the country. These students from Makerere University marched in high spirits to the city centre to congratulate President Amin on his decision.
Any security personnel who try to
in a long, rambling speech, the president told the students he wasn't going to change his mind, and they relished his determined twisting of the imperialist lion's tail. For his part, the president was obviously happy to bask in the new popularity which his anti-Asian policy had brought him. At several points during his speech, he was clearly playing to his audience.
But I know these are the former corrupted police who have been confused by the former regime politically. They are the ones who are letting down some people in the country.
The president now feels he holds all the cards and can afford to ignore any appeals from Britain to get him to reconsider. We asked Britain's Foreign Secretary, Sir Alec Douglas-Home, if there was anything Britain could do to stop him throwing the Asians out.
No, it does not. Well, you can't stop a ruler of a country if he wants to behave in this way, throwing them out. But he has thrown them out for racial reasons. There's no other reason except he says they damage the economy, which is nonsense, because the Asians, in fact, contribute a great deal to the economy of all the African countries. They're good traders, good businessmen, good shopkeepers, and all the rest of it. There's no doubt this will cause terrible hardship to these people, and we have our obligation towards them.
Apart from just negotiating with him, as presumably you now will, what else can you do to stop him? What pressures can you bring to bear?
Well, we shall have to get in touch with him again following the High Commissioner's meeting this afternoon, because he has said that he will modify his plan and that he will exempt from expulsion various categories of people. Therefore, we have to find out what he means by this and find out whether, if he's willing to do this, he will return to an orderly plan for the introduction of these Asians into this country. I don't put this very high. What he said this afternoon doesn't amount to much. It will be a few thousands out of perhaps 50,000. And therefore, this is a mass expulsion on any count. Nevertheless, we have to follow this up diplomatically and very soon and urgently.
But what will you do to Uganda if the whole of this thing goes ahead? Will you stop aid?
I can't imagine that anybody in this country would understand if aid was given to another country which is expelling compulsorily British citizens.
Is that a
threat?
threat?
I'd leave it like that for today, but I did say in the House of Commons the other day that if he goes forward with this plan, of course, we would have to review the whole of our economic relationship with Uganda.
Is it a threat when you say that?
No, I don't want to use threats. I think it's just a fact of life that we face up to, that people would not understand. I shouldn't understand myself, and I don't think other people would either.
But the prospect of losing £4.5 million didn't seem to worry President Amin.
British actually deceived me last year, giving me £10 million. They never give up to now. When I had a really very critical problem of finance, up to now. Now I don't want that money again. And now they have given, I think every year, 4.5 million every year. But this, even if they withdrawn or they take it away, it will not marking time Uganda even 1 minute. I must make this clear. But the British are my best friends. I wish I understood that.
Best friend or not, when Britain sent out Cabinet Minister Geoffrey Rippon to talk to the President, General Amin at first refused to see him. Mr. Rippon spent some of his time talking to Asians at the British High Commission, and then left Uganda to confer with other East African leaders in Kenya and Tanzania. Only after Mr. Rippon had completed his tours of these countries and was about to return home did he finally receive an invitation to meet General Amin. And it was more in a spirit of resignation than of hope that Britain's would-be negotiator arrived at the President's residence in Kampala. General Amin was friendly, but the meeting made little progress. The General remained adamant about the 90-day deadline, and even said that Britain would have to construct transit camps for any Asians who'd not left Uganda by then. After the talks, we spoke to both men.
My decision still stands of 90 days, which I have explained to the minister.
Mr. Rippon, have you accepted, therefore, the President's 90-day deadline?
Well, what we have said, of course, is that the policy is a matter for the government of Uganda, and the President has stated the policy. The British government accepts that it has a legal duty towards and a moral responsibility for the Asians who hold United Kingdom passports. That much is agreed.
Have you in any way...
We've also agreed that it's necessary to set up a working relationship of how to deal with these matters practically. I've said we will, of course, strengthen the staff at the High Commission, and the President has agreed that his departmental ministers and others will cooperate on the practical problems. We have said that we can deal with this matter as speedily as possible, but there are tens of thousands of people involved, and this is a human problem, and all we can really say is we'll deal with it as speedily as possible. I may say, Mr. President, that I was very much reassured by what you and your ministers had to say about the steps that you would take for the protection of the lives and property of Asians, especially those who are United Kingdom passport holders. And I was reassured also by the personal statements that you and your ministers made to me about the arrangements which were being made to ensure that the property of Asians would be valued and that proper prices would be paid for their businesses, they wouldn't be expropriated, and that even if all the payment that was due to them couldn't be made at once, there would be some payment made, and that the residue would be perhaps frozen, and that if it was frozen, then interest would be paid. I was reassured, Mr. President, by what you had to say about the need to deal with this problem in a humane and orderly way. It is a problem. We accept your policy, we accept our responsibilities, but we are, I think, agreed that we must deal with this in a practical and sensible way, and we've thought of establishing the machinery by which this can be done. And we may...
President Amin has said he's fighting an economic war against the Asians, and he's appointed his cabinet colleagues as field commanders. At meetings all over the country, Ugandan government ministers had been explaining the president's decision. At Bombo, 20 miles north of Kampala, the Minister of Commerce and Industry was the guest of honor. The local African traders left him in no doubt that they approved the government's decision to expel the Asians and made it clear they were not particularly concerned to distinguish between citizens and non-citizens as far as the Asians were concerned. Black skins good, brown skins bad seemed to be the message of the day.
It is the same Africans who will probably be married to our daughters.
After the speeches came some traditional tribal dancing, and like any good politician, the minister showed himself to be at one with the people by joining in. For the Africans, it was a happy occasion, but for any Asians within earshot, it must have been a rather frightening experience. Meanwhile, the Asians themselves are getting ready to leave. Already there are long queues at the Kampala Council Clinic as the Asians wait for inoculations against smallpox, cholera and yellow fever. It's all part of the painful process of acquiring the seemingly endless documentation that affects every one of them. For these people, a 90-day clock has started ticking. And even if a jumbo jet took off every day, it wouldn't be sufficient to cope with the numbers who'll have to leave. With 22 different tribes in Uganda, the task of creating a unified nation is understandably difficult. And it's been suggested that General Amin has moved against the Asians at the present time to divert attention from more fundamental divisions. It can't be denied that by singling out the Asians as the main cause of the country's economic problems, General Amin has created among the Africans a unity of a sort. Nationalism is what counts in Uganda now. President Amin has given his people a carnival and an enemy. It remains to be seen how long one can exist without the other.